Good evening, everybody. Welcome. It's Steve Lookner. We have a special primetime live stream tonight. We're going to cover the net neutrality story. The FCC today repealed the Obama administration's net neutrality rules. We want to talk a little bit about what that is. You know, when we were talking about that story today, when we were covering we showed footage of the hearing today, and then we showed President Trump. We had coverage of the White House press briefing, then President Trump's speech on deregulation, and people kept writing to me saying, hey, can we talk more about net neutrality? So we wanted to do a special stream tonight where we get to talk about it more at length and get your comments, hear what you think about this ruling today, and try to make a little more sense of it. It's a bit confusing. It can be a lot confusing the more the details you get, but we want to just try to make a little more sense of it and talk about it at a little more length and try to clarify things a bit. So, well, thank you for joining the stream. Thank you for the moderators who are moderating the stream. Tonight we have in the YouTube chat, JC is there. JC might be the only moderator there at the moment. So JC, it's all on you. And on the website, we have Common Sense and Glenn O. So let's talk a little about this ruling today. And during the broadcast, if you have comments or questions, write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at LOOKNER. Let me know what your thoughts are on this ruling today. So before I get into the details, let me try to, if I can, briefly sum up what this is all about. So in 2015, the FCC during the Obama administration put in these net neutrality rules. And what the basic idea of net neutrality is so those of you probably, well, I was going to say those of you who have internet at your house, but all of you who are watching this have access to the internet. So you get your access to the internet through like AT&T or Charter or Google Fiber, or you get it through your phone, through T-Mobile or AT&T. All those companies that provide internet to you are internet service providers. They're not like the websites. They're not like Google and YouTube. They're just the people who give you the internet, and then you choose what to look at once you have an internet connection. But these companies like Charter and AT&T and what else? Google Fiber, T-Mobile, when you're getting through a phone, all those companies count as internet service providers when you're paying them to get access to the internet. And what net neutrality says is it says internet service providers, companies that are selling you the internet, they can't distinguish between certain websites and certain traffic on the internet. They can't slow one site down and speed one site up. They can't charge you more to see one site but not another site. So, for example, under net neutrality, Charter, Comcast Internet, say you get your internet through Comcast. Under net neutrality, Comcast couldn't say to you, well, we're going to show you YouTube at full speed, but Netflix at half speed. Or they couldn't say to you, well, you have to have $5 more if you want Netflix at full speed. What net neutrality said is that these internet service providers, companies that sell you the internet, cannot distinguish at all between different sites, different content. All the content on the internet, they have to give to you at the exact same speed for the exact same price. That's the basic idea of net neutrality. And these rules, these net neutrality rules, were again put into place in 2015, I believe the date was. I say these dates and then I'm like, wait, is that exactly right? And I want to be exactly right to you. I know it was put in place under Obama. Let me see if I can confirm the 2015 date. Yes, 2015 is right. So those were put in place just a couple of years ago. But today, the FCC voted on party lines, 3-2, 3 Republicans against 2 Democrats, to get rid of those net neutrality rules. So basically now, moving forward with some restrictions, as long as these current rules are in place, let's say you get your internet through Comcast. Comcast can have different speeds for different websites. They can have different pricing plans where they might charge you more on one plan. For all you know, Comcast can have a plan where they say, if you want slow Netflix, you pay $20 a month. If you want fast Netflix, you pay $40 a month. So that would be a case in which they're, slowing down or speeding up a website, which they couldn't do on under net neutrality. They could also have a super cheap plan where they say, we're going to give you websites, but no streaming video, but you get it for $10 a month. Before they couldn't do that because that kind of plan distinguishes between certain sites. It doesn't let you see the streaming video sites, but it lets you see other sites. So those are the kind of things that under net neutrality, internet service providers can do that they couldn't do with no net neutrality. They can do those things, but during net neutrality, they could not do those things. So that's a basic summary, a very basic summary of what it means to have net neutrality and what it means that net neutrality has now been repealed by the FCC. And I think a helpful way of thinking about this, we could talk about more details, but to me, when I try to wrap my head around this, the best thing is to think about concrete examples. So I'm going to give you a couple more concrete examples. But before I do that, I want to just repeat that we're going to take your comments. So we want to know what you think about this. Do you think this move to repeal net neutrality is good? Or do you think it's bad? There's strong feelings here. Look, there's a lot of people in the country who don't think it's a good thing. There are people who do think it's a good thing. What do you think? Write to me on Twitter, @Lookner, @LOOKNER. And also, if you do like this coverage, if you'd like that we give you an alternative to the mainstream media where we can talk about something like net neutrality in a little bit of detail and get your comments on it, please consider donating to Right Side Broadcasting because we can only stay on the air thanks to your donations. You guys keep us on the air. We are a viewer-supported network. So if you like our coverage and you want to support Right Side and see more of our coverage, you can go to the bottom of the YouTube chat and click on the little dollar sign at the bottom of the YouTube chat, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Okay, so, all right, before I get to your comments, to some of your comments, I want to kind of help, again, trying to get a basic idea of what this net neutrality thing is and what does it mean that they've repealed net neutrality. I want to talk about a couple different possible plans you might see now with no net neutrality that you didn't see before. And so for example, here's a plan you might see offered. You could see an internet service provider like Comcast or like AT&T or whoever you get your ISP from. They could give you they could now offer a super duper cheap plan, but with very limited internet access. So for example, they could say, all right, for $10 a month, we're going to give you no streaming video, no streaming music. Now, I'm assuming this is technically possible, but let's assume for the moment it is. No streaming video, no YouTube, no Netflix, no Spotify, no Rhapsody, but it's only $10 a month. And that's an example of a super cheap plan that's cheap because it doesn't let you get a bunch of content. That's the kind of thing that the internet service providers can offer now with no net neutrality that they couldn't offer before. And they might say, the service providers might say, see, that's a good thing because there's people out there who might want super cheap internet. Now we can offer them a really cheap plan. So that would be an example that they might cite as a good result of net neutrality. Now, here's another possible thing that internet service providers might do. Internet service providers might now just say, okay, let's suppose you're subscribed to Comcast and you get an email from Comcast and Comcast says, okay, we have a new rule on our internet service. Netflix is half speed by default for everyone. Whatever your speed is on your internet, you only get Netflix at half speed. If you want full speed at Netflix, you got to pay $20 a month extra. Now, there's nothing from stopping them from doing that now because the net neutrality rules aren't in place anymore. So they could try to charge you fees for certain popular sites. I've heard some people draw an analogy between that kind of plan that's possible, and what would happen with airlines, where airlines started charging you for like baggage, things that had been free before, you started getting charged for, like baggage, like aisle seats. Some people say that with no net neutrality, internet service providers are going to start charging you for things you didn't get charged for before, like full speed Netflix, full speed whatever, pick another popular site, YouTube, full speed Hulu. And here's another thing, another concrete example to give you a general, trying to just get an idea of what this is all about through concrete examples, which I think is helpful. Here's another thing that an internet service provider could do. So right now, AT&T owns DirecTV. AT&T owns DirecTV. And what they could do is say something like this. They could say, okay, if you have AT&T internet, if you watch DirecTV on AT&T internet, we will put that at a super fast speed for you. But say you have some other cable provider, say you have Time Warner Cable, and you try to go online and watch Time Warner Cable through your AT&T internet, through the Time Warner Cable site. They might slow that down. So what AT&T could do, since they own DirecTV, is they could favor DirecTV's content over other content. Because they own DirecTV. Similarly, any kind of internet service provider that owns a channel or owns a website, in theory, they could favor that website and make it faster or cheaper than other websites. And that's a worry some people have. They say, well, what's going to happen is internet service providers, these big companies that sell you the internet like AT&T or Comcast or whatever, they're going to favor certain content. I think Comcast still owns NBC. Don't they own NBC? Let's see. Comcast owns NBC? Question mark. Yeah, I believe Comcast owns NBC. So, look, what's this Comcast? If you have Comcast Internet could say, okay, you get super fast NBC channels, but your CBS and ABC channels content online isn't as fast. So they could favor, an internet service provider could favor channels and sites that that's part of their company. And that's a worry of some people. Some people say they worry that, well, what's going to happen is, AT&T will favor DirecTV stuff and they'll slow down everything else. And so they're basically going to force me to get DirecTV, because if I have AT&T internet and I don't have DirecTV, when I try to watch my cable content online, they're going to slow it down. I'm just saying these are the kinds of things that could happen. Now, one other argument I'm leaving out here for the pro-net neutrality. I'm going to get to your comment, and this is going to be the last point before I get to some comments. But a big argument people make for getting rid of net neutrality. You might say, well, why would you ever want to get rid of net neutrality? Why would you want to let these big internet companies charge more for some content or slow down or speed up certain sites? Why would you ever want to let that happen? So the big argument given for that is that when you regulate internet companies and you tell them what to do, you keep them from making more money. And when you keep them from making more money, you keep them from investing money into their network, investing money into infrastructure. So if you restrict, for example, T-Mobile from varying its pricing with its internet plans that you get on your phone, then T-Mobile is going to have less money to invest in the T-Mobile network and make it faster. Similarly, if you tell Charter Cable that they can't, if you tell Charter, who provides internet, so if you tell Charter Internet, which I guess is Spectrum now. So if you tell Spectrum Internet, hey, you can't charge more for Netflix, or you can't vary your pricing on certain channels, you can't have various pricing plans that distinguish between kinds of content, and you try to restrict the way they can price things, Spectrum Internet will end up having less money, and they won't make improvements to their network. They won't adopt new technologies that cost a lot of money but help speed up things. So what the ISPs say, what the internet service providers say is, look, when you have net neutrality, you're regulating us and you're preventing us from charging more for certain things that people really want, and for coming up with new pricing plans that will help us make more money so we can put more money into our infrastructure, which will ultimately mean faster internet for everyone. So the argument again from the ISPs is net neutrality is regulation. That regulation holds down how much money we can make. And if you hold down how much money we can make, well, too bad we're not going to be able to improve our infrastructure, and your internet's not going to be as fast as it could be, because we could improve it a lot. It's just you're not letting us make money to do that. So that's a big argument by the internet service providers as to why they think there should be no net neutrality. They think it'll ultimately help consumers in the long run because they will make more money and they can put more money into improvements. And they also think they'll be able to do things like offer super cheap plans that don't give you as much internet. For example, a plan that didn't give you Netflix or something like that. So lots of arguments on both sides. I have some more to add here, but you've been listening to me talk for so long. I'm sorry to talk for so long, but I just wanted to try to get a general idea of what net neutrality is, what it is to repeal net neutrality, and what kind of, plans and changes you might be seeing in the internet and your internet service offerings now that net neutrality has been repealed. But before I talk a little more, I want to hear what you think. So what do you think about this? What do you think about the FCC voting today to repeal the Obama administration net neutrality regulations? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Write to me, let me know, at Lookner on Twitter, at Lookner. And I got to say thanks to Elizabeth Luker, who made a very generous $50 donation. Wow. Elizabeth says, how is everybody in the RSBN family doing tonight? It's been very somber around here today, not going to lie. I'm sick and tired of arrogant, sassy pants with deep pockets. Keep on committing voter fraud and nothing being done. Love you all. So Elizabeth's kind of upset, but at the same time, Elizabeth, you contributed to Right Side. We really appreciate that. Your donations are what keep us on the air. So if you want to support Right Side Broadcasting, support more programming like this, you can go to the bottom of the YouTube chat and click on the $ at the bottom of the YouTube chat, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Okay, let's see if you guys have comments, if anybody's written to me. JC, fantastic question by JC, one of our moderators. Steve, does this help RSBN or is it going to get worse? We're not that big right now, RSBN. We're not like YouTube or Netflix. So I don't think that you're going to see AT&T Internet just, say you got to pay more to get Right Side Broadcasting or something. They might say you got to pay more to get Netflix, or you got to get paid more to get Hulu, or you got to pay more to get HBO. I don't know if any of this is really in the near term going to affect Right Side Broadcasting in any kind of special way. Now, I will say this. Let me say this. In theory, if there's no net neutrality, you might say, well, that means that internet service providers can slow down or hide certain sites because they don't have to treat all sites the same way. So couldn't they just slow down or hide conservative sites? Now, the thing is, though, whatever kind of favoring or unfavoring of sites and charges for certain sites or discounts for certain sites, internet service providers will start doing, they do have to, in a detailed way, tell the government and consumers they are doing this. So I am guessing that, let's say AT&T all of a sudden said, okay, well, there's no more net neutrality. We're going to now slow down all conservative websites, and you can only get them at 1/10 of the speed that you get other sites. I'm guessing the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, would step in and say, no, you cannot do that. That's anti-competitive or something like that, and they would not allow them to do that. So any kind of favoring or unfavoring of certain sites does need to be approved by the government. The government could step in and stop that. So I do think that if you had internet service providers, and they have to fully disclose all of the favoring and unfavoring and slowing and speeding up that they're doing. They have to fully disclose all of that. So I would think that if you had a big internet service provider say we're going to favor liberal content or favor conservative content or disfavor, certain kind of political content, the consumers are going to hear about it. They're going to make a stink, and I'm guessing that you might see government action. So I don't personally anticipate, AT&T all of a sudden blocking conservative websites. But who knows, and that's going to be, if they do start doing it, people will report that they're supposed to report that they're doing that. Consumers will be able to complain, and the government will be able to do something about it if they want. So, but a very good question, JC. But in the immediate future, I don't think it's going to affect us strongly either way. But if we get really big, maybe it'll affect us strongly. Now, here's how it could affect us. If the internet, some people think this will just make the internet more expensive for people. They think what's going to happen is these big ISPs like Comcast and AT&T, they're just going to use the repeal of net neutrality as an excuse to just start charging you for things you didn't have to pay for before. So, for example, AT&T will say to you, hey, if you have AT&T internet, you now have to pay $20 more for full-speed Netflix, or we're going to slow it down for you. And where that ends up being a bit problematic is if people don't have another ISP to turn to, that can be an issue. So I'm going to get to some more comments in a second, but let me make one more, I think, big point here. There's a theory, some economists think that net neutrality, that getting rid of net neutrality is not a bad thing. And here's the argument why it's not a bad thing. So you get rid of net neutrality. Suppose I have AT&T internet, okay? I'm at home. I pay AT&T for my internet. And net neutrality is repealed. And AT&T sends me a letter next week and they say, Steve, we are now charging you $50 a month more if you want full-speed YouTube and full-speed Netflix. Now you might think that's going to happen because they can now just charge more for certain websites. But what some economists would say is, well, if AT&T does that, Steve, you just are going to unsubscribe from AT&T and you're going to get internet somewhere else. So the idea here is that what will restrict these internet service providers from just adding on all of these crazy charges to your internet bill is if they start doing that, you'll just get rid of their internet and you'll go with somebody else for internet. So in theory, market forces will take care of it and will prevent companies from just jacking up rates as they could do now, or jacking up charges on different websites that are popular websites. So that's the theory. So some people argue that, hey, net neutrality, getting rid of it isn't bad because, the market will take care of it. But the problem other people point out is that for many people in this country, there is not a lot, if any, choice between internet service providers. When I was living in Alabama, I basically needed to get Charter, Spectrum. I think toward the end of my stay at my place in Alabama, there might have been one other company that was offering internet, and they were kind of iffy. I had never heard of them before, so I don't know how reliable they were. But at most, there were two. But realistically, to me, there was really one choice. There was not a lot of competition where I was in Alabama. And I want to show you something too. This is a graph I saw in an Economist article from recently, and you can see that graph there. See where it says fixed broadband providers? So this is in the United States. It tells you, if you want to get internet from through the wall, through cable or through some connect, not through wireless, how many choices do you have? And check that out. 10% of households have no provider. Roughly 40% of households have only one provider. And about 45% have only two providers. So the vast, vast majority of people in this country have either two or fewer internet providers. So if that's the case, there's not that much competition. And if say your only provider is AT&T. If AT&T says we're going to charge you $50 more a month for Netflix, if you want internet, you have no other choice but pay it. And if you have AT&T and Comcast and that's it, and AT&T says we're going to charge you $50 a month or more for Netflix, and Comcast says we're going to charge you $50 a month or more for full-speed YouTube, you have nowhere else to go. You have to choose one of those companies. So, on the one hand, some people say, well, what's going to keep companies from jacking up their rates and putting in all these extra charges and slowing down certain websites until you pay extra for it, what's going to keep them from doing that is competition. But the way broadband is now in the United States, the way internet providers are, as you can see from that chart, the vast, over 90% of the people have either 0, 1, or 2 internet providers. And about half of people have 0 or 1 internet provider, so there's no competition at all. That's potentially a problem, some people think. And some people, so the Economist, who I think is a good kind of middle of the road kind of paper where a publication, they are against getting rid of net neutrality because what they say is that if you get rid of net neutrality, you got to be sure there's a lot of competition among internet service providers and people have a choice to go to another provider if their provider jacks up the rates. But what they say, I'll show you right here, is this was written before today, but let me just show you what they say. They say Ajit Pai, the FCC's newest chairman, thinks that strict rules enforcing network neutrality are not needed. Instead, he wants internet service providers to set their own policies and get another agency, the Federal Trade Commission, to enforce them case by case. That might work in countries with fierce competition among fixed broadband providers. In America, where millions of households have only one choice of high-speed supplier, it would surely fail. If big ISPs can charge that's not relevant to my point here. So the Economist, at least, thinks that they disagree with the FCC decision because they say there's not enough internet competition. If there was enough internet competition, they might agree with getting rid of net neutrality, but they think, the Economist, that with such little competition among internet service providers, if you get rid of net neutrality, you're just going to have a lot higher rates and it's going to be worse for consumers. That's what the Economist thinks. Maybe you think differently. All right. I've only gotten to one comment so far. I'm terrible, but a lot to talk about here. So, all right, I am resolving to get to more comments right now. Write to me on Twitter, @Lookner. Let me know what you think about this FCC repealing net neutrality today. Let me check. If anyone wrote me yet. I love Dots 2 says, I love Dots 2 said, how does net neutrality benefit RSB network? Will it make it easier for the little guys to grow versus mainstream media? I don't see. That's an interesting question. What you're saying is, does this help or hurt like smaller websites in smaller content, smaller sites like ours? I have no idea. Off the top of my head, I can't tell you why it would help or hurt the smaller websites, but I honestly have no idea. That's the best thing I can say. Maybe somebody has studied this and has a better response to this. It's possible it doesn't really help or hurt them much either way, but I don't really have a good answer for you. But a good question. Dancing iPod says, I think it will be good if they repeal net neutrality. So they have repealed it today. So and he says, hashtag unpopular opinion. Is that a he? I think it's a he. Actually, I don't know because it says it's just a picture of Trump. So I think it's a he, but I'm not sure. Okay. Let me see if there are other comments about net neutrality here. JC says, did everyone forget the UN was trying to gain control of the internet? I vaguely remember something about that in some sort of case. I'm not sure if it was like, I don't believe it was like full control of the internet. So I can't really speak on that intelligently, JC, personally. I'd have to go do some more research on what I remember. So, but thank you for writing in, JC. And by the way, so I see, before we did this broadcast, there was a story that came out about the Charlottesville car crash, and I posted a couple posts on Twitter about it, and now I'm getting all these responses to that. So I think what I'm going to do tonight is also do a stream on that story after this stream. How about that? You're going to get 2 streams. So I'll get that going as soon as we're done with this stream. But in the meantime, I would still like to hear your comments if you have comments on this. What do you think about the net? What do you think about the FCC repealing net neutrality? Do you like it or do you not like it? Let me know at Lookner on Twitter. At Lookner on Twitter. Chris Yates writes in, with the lifting of the rules, do you think it will make room for other companies to enter the market and give us more choices, more money to be had, more people wanting to make it? So this is where things get kind of complex and really interesting, Chris. So as I was saying before, in theory, if there's enough competition, if a lot of different companies are offering you internet where you live, then that will keep one company from like charging you outrageous charges for certain sites because another company could just come in and offer you a different plan. The problem is right now there's not a lot of competition among home broadband providers. There's this term called natural monopoly, and the idea of a natural monopoly is when like the conditions under which a business gets sets up and operates, the usual conditions, they basically encourages a monopoly. So for example, right now, if somebody's going to provide you internet, they have to have some kind of line running into your house. Like, the cable company has to have a cable line running into your house, or Google Fiber has to have a fiber line running into your house. That really prevents new internet service providers from getting started. Because think of it, if you want to start your own internet service provider, what are you going to do? How much money is it to like start laying cable into people's houses? I mean, so the fact that to be an internet service provider, you need to have all this cable going to people's houses or fiber going to people's houses, that is such an enormous expense, it really restricts the amount of companies offering internet service. So what I've heard some people say is they say, well, if we're going to get rid of net neutrality, what we should do is force whoever runs the line into your home. Say Spectrum runs cable lines into your home, and that's where they use the internet. That's where the internet comes from. Some people say what the government should do is force whoever runs those lines into your home to let other companies like lease the lines from you and offer you internet service. It's kind of like that. I live in Atlanta right now. It's like that with our gas. There's only one gas line running into my apartment building, but there are a number of different gas companies that offer me service. And so they have different price plans, but they all use the same line. So I think one utility put the line into my building, but the way the government wants more competition here. So they've said, hey, gas company that puts the line into Steve's building, you have to let other companies, pay you to use your gas line and offer their own plans. And so some people think that what the government should do is allow startup internet service providers to, come in easier and not have to spend all this money to put cable into your house, and instead give some money to Spectrum. And at the same time, they could, in exchange for giving some money to Spectrum, they could offer you internet and offer you a different plan. This was kind of like this also when there used to be landline phones. I think at a certain point it became deregulated and there were different long distance carriers. I mean, I'm really old. So you remember this? You could get different long distance carriers on your landline phone, but they weren't building new phone lines across the country. Whoever owned the phone lines was made to allow those different long distance plans to offer long distance plans on their phone lines. And so some people think that what would be best is if the government stepped in and basically made it easier for new internet service providers to offer internet service at your house. So instead of the one or two choices for internet now, maybe you'd have 10 or 15 choices. And if that happened, then maybe you'd have companies coming up with all kinds of different pricing plans for which slowed down or sped up certain sites and charged you more for site X but less for site Y. And maybe with lots of competition, you'd have this huge amount of choice, and you'd be able to find certain plans you like. So if that kind of thing happens, if there's a lot of competition, some people think that we could see, a lot of development among internet service providers. But places like The Economist, as I showed you, and a lot of other people are not optimistic that this kind of getting rid of net neutrality is going to lead to a lot of development of like internet service providers, of new internet service providers and new kinds of plans for you, because that they think will be good for you, because they say, well, there's just not that much competition among the internet service providers, and you only usually get one or two choices at your house. That's my long answer to your question. But that's a very good question, though. All right, let me see if there are more comments on FCC repealing net neutrality. Mr. D.E. Banks writes in, hey, Steve, just to touch on what JC brought up about when he was talking about the UN trying to take control of the internet, Mr. D.E. Banks says, Obama gave the ICANN name servers control over to the EU. Why is he not in jail on treason charges? Anyway, the end is near if you ask me. Smiley face from Mr. D.E. Banks. Thank you for writing in. Okay. Sean writes in, I strongly oppose repealing net neutrality. It will hinder small businesses and allow ISPs to prioritize websites and censor political opinions and news. Coach writes in, I would pay good money to see all those people complaining about Obama's FCC chairman voting to repeal net neutrality actually explain it in detail. I'd bet most of them hadn't heard of it before this week. Outrage, hashtag outrage, Donald Trump Jr. at Lookner. Now, I believe the chair, hold on a second. Let's look up Ajit Pai. Yeah, Ajit Pai is the current chair of the FCC, and he was appointed by President Trump. He was appointed by President Trump in January of 2017. Let's see here. Nancy Mattis says, how long do they think until it is known how messy this will get? Is this a good question? I know nothing about the internet complexities, nor an IT or market expert. Thanks, Steve. Love your energy and clear explanations. Stay hydrated, too. Thanks, Nancy. It's a very good question. So what you seem to be asking is, how long will it take before we know how much this is going to change our internet? Well, I've been reading some articles and people don't really know. You know, the internet service providers have been saying, well, we're not going to start charging you a lot for extra stuff yet, which would make sense because they're not going to say that even if they are. While the internet service providers wanted this ruling. So whatever you think of the ruling, they did want this ruling. They want more freedom to come up with different pricing plans. So I guess we'll have to wait and see, 6 months from now, a year from now. We'll see. Are there the different plans? I don't think tomorrow you're going to get offered a different plan, but maybe within 6 months to a year, we'll see if there are new kinds of plans. And but I don't really have a firm timeline for you. I will say this though. Look, there's another presidential election in 2020. A Democrat could win that election. So if a Democrat wins, then you might have an FCC going back to be Democratic. And I think I believe the FCC commissioners how does that work? I really want to know can they be fired by the president? Let me see here. How do we, what I'm trying to figure out is, so right now the FCC is 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats. And what I'm trying to figure out is let's say a Democrat wins the presidency in 2020. Can they just fire all the commissioners and, they're confirmed for 5-year terms. So FCC commissioners are confirmed for 5-year terms. That's what Wikipedia says. So if that's the case, then a new administration, a new president's going to be able to appoint new FCC commissioners. And so if you're an ISP now and you want to start doing new pricing policies, you might think to yourself, well, we got to do it soon because if we wait 4 years, we might have a Democratic president in 4 years, and then we won't be able to do these pricing plans. So I would think in the next year or two, you'll definitely see some different pricing plans and different, offers in terms of speeding up or slowing down certain content on your internet from your internet service providers. Because if they're going to do it, they should do it while there's a Republican president. Nicholas writes in, Steve, I was disappointed in the vote about the vote for net neutrality. I believe it's disgusting that the FCC and Ajit Pai are ignoring the American people. Thank you, Nicholas, for writing in. You're welcome, Chris Yates. Good question. Brendan Butler writes in, hello, Steve. I know this is a huge issue with most people supporting net neutrality, but what is your viewpoint about this whole ordeal? So, we here at Right Side Broadcasting, we are agenda free. So we don't come on here and tell you we think this because we don't want to do that. We want to just report on the news. We want to tell you the arguments on the different sides. And our job is not to, we're so sick of media with an agenda. We just want to just report the news, talk about different arguments people have, really get into the details of the story, and then let you decide what to think. So I'm not going to say what I think. I do think there's arguments on both sides of this, and but I also think it's kind of complex, when you get into for example, I talked about how some people think there should be more competition among internet service providers. However, I don't know the first thing about what the laws are on can the government make Charter's Spectrum Internet open up their lines to other internet service providers, and what would have to be done for that to happen, and how realistic is that? How realistic would it be for them how easy would it be to get more competition among internet service providers? That starts getting very technical, and I don't really I'm not familiar with all that stuff. So, but we're just trying to. I think we've been presenting arguments on both sides during this stream, which we're trying to do. Let's see. Finnish American Nationalist Right. Finnish American Nationalist Right writes, all this doom and gloom didn't happen before net neutrality came in, and the repeal will bring us back to what it was before net neutrality came in. So what you're pointing out is that before 2015, there was no net neutrality. Now, some people say, well, the internet's different now than it was before 2015 because there's all these streaming services and such. That's a whole other argument, which I'm not that familiar with all the details of that argument, but but that's a point I've heard some people make too. Is you're saying, well, the world didn't collapse with no net neutrality before 2015. So thank you for that point, Finnish American Nationalist Right. Okay, I think I have gotten to all the comments people wrote in. If you've been enjoying this stream and you enjoy Right Side Broadcasting, please consider donating, because we cannot stay on the air without your donations. That's what allows us to do this. We can do a full stream on net neutrality and take your comments, which is really cool, because I don't think you saw such a full stream if you were watching mainstream media today. But we can only do it thanks to your help. So if you'd like to support Right Side Broadcasting, go to the YouTube chat, go to the bottom of the YouTube chat, click on the $ at the bottom of the YouTube chat. Even small donations are welcome. Or you can go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. All right, so I think the plan is going to be this. Well, let me see if there's any more comments here. I think what I am going to do is, as I mentioned before, there's another big story tonight about this story about the Washington Post came out with a story about about what they believe there's going to be a first-degree murder charge in the Charlottesville car crash, and I tweeted about that before, and I really want to do a stream on it. So I think right now we are going to wrap up this stream, and then I'm going to quickly, as quickly as I can, get another stream on the air about the new Charlottesville story that came out tonight, which, because it has Charlottesville in it, I'm guessing there's a 70% chance that you'll see black screens and stuff from YouTube, because when we do something about Charlottesville, a lot of the time YouTube has some kind of trigger, I feel like, where if they see Charlottesville as part of the stream, they go crazy on it and don't want it broadcast. But we'll have to see. It'll be a big adventure for all of us. Anyways, so we're going to do that. We're going to do that really soon. And for now, I want to say thanks for everybody for watching this broadcast and sending in your comments about net neutrality and supporting Right Side. Thanks to the moderators, Guinevere, Jude, who else? JC, everybody in the chat room, and Common Sense and Gleno on the website. Appreciate your work. And we're going to sign off to this stream for now, and we will be back with another stream in a few minutes. If you want to know when we're coming on the air with our live streams, subscribe to us on YouTube and click on the notifications bell so you get notified. Although today we did like 4 streams and they've only sent out 2 notifications. Also, on Facebook, we're at Right Side Broadcasting. On Twitter, you can follow me at @Lookner. I post about breaking news all the time, @Lookner on Twitter. And also, you can follow Right Side Broadcasting on Twitter @RSB Network. So that's going to wrap up the stream for now. Thanks for joining us for this stream on net neutrality. I am Steve Lookner. We'll be doing another stream, as I just mentioned, in a few minutes. But from all of us here at Right Side Broadcasting, have a great night, and we will see you soon. Oh, and wait, before I said that, you know what? I forgot. Some people said thank you in the chat room. So right as I said see you soon, I wanted to say thanks. Christine Bestgen, thanks for saying thanks. Tom O'Neill, who else? JC, Jasmine Guthrie, Jason Thornton. I knew there was something I forgot to do. Donna Maria, and everybody else there in the chat room. Okay, that's it. We did the shout outs. And Wicked M. All right. Until next time, this is Steve Lookner for Right Side Broadcasting. We'll see you soon, maybe even if you join us for the stream in a few minutes. But for now, have a great night, and that's it for this stream.